We'll open up this to board member comments. Any board member comments in
Patel?
general? Yes,
Can I
Mr.
go?
Vishal Patel.
Thank you. So, as a board member and a concerned parent, I believe it's our responsibility to ensure that parents are informed about significant aspect of their children's life. Policy 5756 undermines that right. It makes it optional for administration to inform parent about the gender choices of their children. And it undermines the fundamental role the parents play in guiding their children. So, and I know Miss Sanjana Patel and Mr. Chris Lugo was very concerned about this topic even before they got on the board, and it was part of their campaign agenda. So I urge the board member to consider abolishing this policy and reinforcing the importance of open communication between schools and families. And I like to put the motion to abolish policy 5756.
I'll second.
So what is, can you reiterate what's the motion?
Abolishing policy 5756.
Is there any?
Motion,
Okay.
there's a second, so now you should call for discussion.
Okay, so any board members, any discussion?
56.
Mr. Lugo?
Thank you, Board President. And Board Member Vishal Patel, you're absolutely 100% correct. This is something that we were most definitely concerned with. We did campaign on it, and I can speak for myself. I fully believe in what you had just said. This is something going forward. We do have our legal representation. They are looking at this, digging a little bit further. And we're also, we are also taking into consideration the legal gains and the legal pitfalls that other districts have actually experienced as well, so we could actually leverage them and use them to our advantage with moving forward. Okay, you are 100% correct. I don't necessarily think that there's a board member who's sitting up here in the dais that that actually believes otherwise, that parents should be kept in the dark. From what I understand, I don't think anybody here has ever communicated that to me. But you're absolutely right. I mean, 5756 does put us in a bind, and not fault of our own. I mean, it is put into state law, unfortunately. So we do need to find a way to navigate that. However, but to your point, you're absolutely correct. We stand in alignment with the parents and their rights, to be informed with the decisions that their children are making. Especially decisions that could have catastrophic consequences. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board
Any-
President?
Yes,
Any
Ms. Smith.
comments? I just want to say, don't get me wrong, 5756 is not about whether children should change their identity. It's about the parents being informed. And parents need to know what's happening to their children in order to provide the best support. I mean, we all know who loves the children the most. It's the parent. Who's ultimately responsible for the children until they turn 18. It's the parent, not the state government. We have entrusted the policy committee chair, Brian Rivera, with this issue for months and months. We have heard nothing. This issue rise last year during the campaign trail already, and we have waited a whole year. We don't see any resolution. We don't hear any possible, resolution at all. So, but we have to know, every day this policy remained in effect is a day that parents are kept in dark. So therefore, I think I'm going to vote for abolishing this policy.
All right. Any other board member comments? Mr. Rivera?
So, Eddie, are we allowed to discuss what the attorney says? Because it says attorney-client privilege, attorney work product.
Ellen, you want to?
What you're referring to.
So,
Alan, that was a brief that was provided by Inglesino and Taylor in relationship to guidance on how to proceed with this policy 5756.
The implementation of the policy?
The options in relationship to modification of the policy, keeping the policy as is, and the potential to abolish the policy that Mr. Patel just had said as well.
Mr. Rivera, you are allowed to speak on any opinion that you have. You cannot read from the legal opinion, but if you have an opinion, even if it's based upon the legal opinion, you are allowed to express it, but you cannot disclose attorney-client privilege.
Thank you. So a couple of months ago, and I want to give Mr. Morrow a lot of credit. You know, he came out multiple times to plead his case. And for someone to do that, I have the most respect for you for doing that. So when he made those comments, I thought it was important for us to meet to discuss this. We've met with the policy meeting, and we met with the people that are actually on the policy meeting. Vishal actually asked to attend the meeting, so he was a part of the conversation. And it was a very good, productive meeting. At the end, we did ask the attorney to let us know what our options are. Because again, this is a very controversial policy. We don't want to, you know, if anyone knows anyone, Chris nailed it saying that everyone has care about parental rights here. But again, this is a interesting and very tricky policy. So what we did was we hired Iglesino and Taylor to come in to actually give us some feedback. They gave us a background of the policy. They talked about what other districts are doing. And they actually gave us 3 particular options. I believe Vishal actually said at a board meeting a couple of months ago. The hardest thing about this was, like I just said now, I can't share what the attorney said. But the attorney gave us 3 options. The attorney gave us the recommended option, and that's why we pretty much haven't really discussed it. So the reality is I wasn't sure if we were allowed to I was told that we can't share this, and now.
You can't share the document, but again, if you have made a deduction of your own opinion, you can, if there's debate, you can, you know, whatever that deduction is based upon the meeting, based upon what the attorney said, if you've come to your own conclusion or opinion, you may express that in discussion now.
The attorney provided an option, and it was an option that protects the district, protects the staff members, protects the child. So it's, my opinion is, again, I'm for parental rights, but I'm also here to protect everybody. And that was the recommendation from the attorney. That, I guess, Eddie, I don't know if you want to add anything to this.
Board President?
Yes, Mrs. Payne.
Brian, if you couldn't share with the public, even for the legal issue, you could probably share with the other board members if you are ready to move forward with this policy, right? We have started, the conversation started, we asked the policy committee to look into this issue months ago, and we have, I mean, for me, I have not heard anything. And what's there for board transparency and for board collaboration to resolve this issue? I have seen none. So could you give us, I know, a timeline that what's the next step? When do you plan to have this resolved, or when do you have to have a proposal of what's the next step? I hope it's not after the election.
Thank you. Mr. Rivera, you want to respond to that?
I don't think the election's got anything to do with it.
People amaze me. I could definitely share the document with you. I know Vishal was aware of it, Chris was aware of it. It's interesting, and the policy people on the policy committee were aware of that document. But if you want to see it, I'll be more than welcome to share. Happy to share it with you.
Could you share a timeline that what's the next step, or what do we?
Shannon, I mean, we have a motion on the table, we have a second, it's a discussion, we are gonna vote on it one way or the other, so.
Yeah,
If I
Mr.
may-
Vishal Patel,
I'm
so.
sorry,
Yeah, Mr. Roth.
Patel, unless there's a point of order, Mr. Rivera was determined to have the floor. He can have the floor. He allowed Ms. Pennington to make interrupt and ask a question. He still has the floor unless you're concluded.
No, I'm fine with it. And, you know, these are just the games they play.
Now,
No, I'm just saying, just for parliamentary procedure, you have the floor, you received it, So move on.
Let
to
me,
more
so there's
It's
this
not a game
question-
for the students or for
uh,
the parents.
1 second, Mrs. Peng, and I'll do one
Right.
more round.
You shouldn't say this
for-
is a game. This is not a game.
Shannon, I'll do one more round for board member comments, if any. Before that, I have a question for the attorney. So, well, we have had motions come on the floor before in this board, this throughout the year. So I understand the motions come on the floor. What is the process? And this policy is, yeah, something that, you know, raises eyebrows of certain people, something that people have to own whether they vote yes or no. There are implications to it. And I was a part of the policy committee and I was in that meeting. So a whole lot of things were discussed as you briefed, and whatever allowed, not allowed is one thing. And as Vishal, you were also part of that. And, you know, like Mr. Lugo, Mr. Vishal Patel, Mrs. Pang, Mr. Rivera, all of us, I myself strongly agree that if, now, I'm not talking about the policy here, but from I understand at this point, is we are talking about not informing the parents. I personally am absolutely opposed to that. The parent has to know what's going on with the child. Absolutely. So that's one part of that, right? The policy may have other things and implications, and those are the things that were a part of discussion. So coming to the point of the question to attorney is, since there's a motion on the table, motion on the floor, and
No motion to table. There's a motion and a second. I didn't hear a motion to table.
I did.
sorry, motion
I-
to for the vote. Motion to vote. What is the option the board has right now to discuss in a closed session, or there is no such option if we want to all discuss?
Look,
in-
This is.
Gotta have a vote.
It's a vote. I mean, I put a motion, Shannon
I
seconded
was
it,
just
it
checking
has
with
to
the
be
attorney.
voted.
Yeah, the answer is yes. That was
Correct.
my legal
Thank
opinion.
you.
My parliamentary position is that there's a legal motion on the table. The motion has been seconded. It's the appropriate time. We are allowed to have debate. Debate is to be done in public on a motion. There's nothing privileged or confidential that needs to be on a policy that needs to be discussed in exec. So at this point, unless there's a superseding motion, you can call the question, take a vote up or down.
Okay. All right. So any
Sir?
more board member comments?
Sir,
Yes, Mr. Romano.
could you please read the motion?
You want to read the motion?
Motion to abolish policy 5756.
Thank you.
I apologize, Mr. Patel. Is there a company, I don't know your policies, your regs, I don't have access to them online. Is there a corresponding regulation as well? I don't have access to that, Doctor.
According to Dr. Alderelli, is Strauss estimate.
I don't believe there is.
Okay, so then it's just, and for the audience, the motion is just for the policy. There is no regulation that corresponds. If there was a regulation that corresponds, you'd have to have a separate vote or join that
Right,
regulation
together.
with the policy, yes.
Right.
So
So
at
I have
this
a-
point,
So I have a motion on the abolishment, 5756 by Mr. Patel, Vishal Patel, and the second was
by Ms. Pang.
Ms. Penny. I'll roll call. Mr.
Roll call,
Lu-
Mr. Dole.
Mr. Lugo,
Yes.
Ms. Patel,
Yes.
Mr. Vishal Patel,
Yes.
Mr. Rivera,
Based on an attorney's recommendation, I say no.
Ms. White,
I think we need to see what the attorney's recommendation is. And I'm just going to take this opportunity right now to say why it is so very important, why we continue with the caucus meetings before the regular action meeting, so these things can be discussed and we can make, honest, informed decisions. How can you make this decision without knowing what's in that document? I mean, we need to know this so that we can do the right thing the right way. As far as my own opinion, I don't agree with that policy even a little bit, but I think we need to know what is in that document before we can decide.
Is that a, I'm
Is
sorry,
that a-
is that
It's
a
an
no or
abstain.
abstain?
It's a no.
It's a no.
It's a no. Thank you.
Ms. Peng?
Yeah, the committee had a meeting in June, and so far, it's not about another caucus. So far, we have not heard anything to be shared with the board. So, yeah, of course, I said the vote is yes.
Vice President Romano?
No.
President Patel?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Any board member comments? Any other board member comments?
Thank you.
Sir,
Yes, Mr. Romano.
if this goes to court, can the court overrule us? Sir?
What do you, I'm not sure overrule.
If
the
we
decision.
voted to abolish this,
Mhm.
can the state or a higher court?
Well, the state, well.
The
the
state's
state would
rule
have
is
this-
what?
Well, anybody could file suit against the board, obviously.
And where do we stand, sir?
Well, the court cases are saying, that there was an admission by the Attorney General's office that the policy, they only can issue guidance, they can't require us to pass it one way or the other. There is the court's theory is that there is already an LAD policy in place, and discrimination against a sexual affiliation, sexual affection is covered under that policy. So there's a theory in either way. And it all depends on the judge you get. The decision that was done out of, I believe it's Morris County decision, out of Monmouth County are not precedential in Middlesex County. So the judge in Middlesex County can have a different determination.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other board member comments before we open up to public?
Finally, I want to talk about the vote you guys just took on this board policy. By repealing the board policy, which I could care less either way, but I'm concerned about my members, your employees, my members. You have nothing in place now. So you're asking people if we need to disclose this to parents, which as a parent of 2 daughters, I personally have no issue with, but you're asking them then to violate the law. I also have to question, we have training, for example, yearly on FERPA rights for students. And I don't know how this also affects FERPA rights for students. You're putting our people, without having some board policy in place, in a very awkward position. If you were to repeal it and replace it with something, at least we can say, well, we have to abide by board policy. But if there's no policy in place, and we have to disclose this to parents, in theory, we are violating the law by doing so. So I have major concerns about what just happened, the protection of your employees, my members, and actually the members of every unit, including Mr. Ross's members as vice principals and principals in this district. So if you have this repealed, I suggest at some point in the very near future, you come up with some policy that at least we can say, by contract, we have to abide by board policy. It wasn't our decision to violate the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hrevnak. And to your comment, the last comment about the policy, yeah, so this thing has been discussed from months and months in the board meeting by public, and like any policy, this is my personal opinion, everything has a repercussion. This board have had motions on the floor, people make decisions, whether yes or no, every individual made their decision, but I am also with you on and having concern about ifs and buts and what happens next. Repeal, replace, and some of the things were discussed in the committee. It's an area that requires a thorough legal review as well as very careful consideration of repercussions. It's not something that can be taken lightly, right? Like I stated again, the board members say their opinion, yes or no, and some had comments. That's one thing. But I would also ask Dr. O'Reilly to, and I'm sorry that increases work for the administration, and that's a sad part about this. But for the district, it's very important that Dr. O'Reilly and your team take a careful look at it and whatever is needed to act upon it as in a timely manner.
Can I just readdress only because my time wasn't up anyway? I understand where you're coming from. However, by repealing this policy, theoretically, that takes effect right now. Right now. So tomorrow, if a parent calls or a teacher needs to call or whatever, are we supposed to disclose this to parents at this time, which theoretically now is in violation of the law? That is my concern. And that's one of the reasons I have to agree again with, I believe Mr. Rivera mentioned it, Ms. White, of having a caucus separate, so that these things are discussed, all things are looked at in advance before you take this vote. Again, as a parent, I don't necessarily disagree what you guys are talking about here. However, you're putting a lot of people now in a very difficult position and theoretically asking them to violate the law because we have nothing in place. Thank you.
So thank you for bringing that to their attention. And again, speaking of the caucus, absolutely there should be a caucus, but regardless of whether we have a caucus or not, there are motions on the floor throughout the year. When we had the caucus meeting, there were motions on the floor. When we did not have the caucus meeting, we had motions on the floor. So this has been happening around the year, and board members make a decision. But yeah, we have a lot of respect for your opinion. So speaking of that, we would seriously, I would recommend Dr. O'Reilly and ask him to take this as a utmost urgent priority. Right, thank you. Anyone else for public comments? Mr. Mara.
Anthony Morrow, 5 Coletto Court in Edison. I want to congratulate you all of you. You've addressed a difficult issue, and you've actually made a decision. Those of you who did not vote to abolish policy 5756, I can only ask that you reconsider and give some thought to it. As far as difficulty, the policy itself creates difficulty. So for those who think it's created a difficult situation, the policy itself, when it existed, created a difficult situation. So I commend you. I'm overjoyed when I leave here. I'll probably be jumping up and down, and I've already texted my wife. Well done. That's it. Well done.
Thank you. Next for public comments. All right, thank you. Next, Mr. Ross.
Good evening. Before I jump into my normal ebullient, what's great about Edison High spiel, I just want to say that, seriously, I share many of the concerns of the ETEA president, Matt Hrevnak, when it comes to the abolition of that policy. We keep hearing about the NJLAD. When we spell out those initials, it kind of fills where the conversation should go. It's a New Jersey law that set these things in motion. So that's a little further down Route 1, it's Trenton. People have to make sure that they're, again, following the chain of command, as our board president says. They need to talk to their elected representatives down in Trenton, and they need to talk to people who pass laws if they have issues and not necessarily have it come here. And the LAD part is law against discrimination. And I hope that when we remove policies, and I know that teacher, student, parent triangle, when that works best, that's when people learn. But we need to make sure that we're helping our most vulnerable students and we're keeping them safe. Whether it's our LGBTQ students, whether it's students who've just transferred into the district, whether it's students who are socially, economically disadvantaged, we have to make sure that we're always making this a safe district for them, and we're not just making some moves on that. But I just wanted to say that. Also want to thank J.P. Stevens.